wine blender.
So, dude, we talked about Alice Cooper, but the love of horror metal continues. I mean, by the time we were in high school, like that was pretty much a dominating force. When you think about bands like Nine Inch Nails, White Zombie, like it goes on and on. Even today, there's Ghost, and there's a bunch of new great bands like that band Dana really liked that you guys played me the other day. That I really
Night Swing Orchestra.
Yes, Night Swing Orchestra. They're awesome. Dude, please tell me now. When exactly did the Misfits Hulk flex into your life?
When did it flex into my life?
Yeah.
I just happened on not Brutal Planet. We're still talking about that on American Psycho. I ended up. You talk a lot about that T-shirt and stuff. Like a poser bought the T-shirt because it was like a Pushhead T-shirt.
Dude, everybody.
If you remember
that T-shirt.
Pushhead, like it was like what Metallica's older like T-shirts used to look like back. Before and around the Black Album and stuff. I'm not sure if they still do that, but he has a very distinct looking fucking like skull and all that stuff. And I think it was designed. The same T-shirt was designed that way. It's not your typical like Misfits. You had the Misfit like skull logo, which everybody knows. Like every 14-year-old girl walks around wearing and not knowing what it is, type of thing. But
and 14-year-old boys. I knew a dude.
40-year-old.
I know a dude who wore that shirt day and night back in the punk scene, and I'm like, eventually when I know my shit, I'm like, who do you like better, Danzig or Graves? And he just looked at me blankly, like he had no idea what I was talking about, and I'm just like,
yeah, I'm shitting all over him. I'm like, I walked around not listening. So about a month goes by, and I'm like, oh, I might as well like search out some Misfits because I look pretty stupid wearing this shirt. Because actually, the same thing happened to me. A dude came up to me, was like saying, like, "What did you think of American Psycho?" I'm like, "I don't know what I thought."
It's a great movie.
Psycho. This was before the movie.
Oh wow!
Oh, it was a great read. Yes, I'm like 13 years old. It was a fine read. Really kept me up. Very, 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 very boring. So yeah, I ended up listening to it, and I remember being like, "Fuck, these songs are so heavy." But I was into more metal. Mm-hmm. So like, and they're really short. To me, like back then, I'm like just before you're about to get into it, and you're like headbanging and all that stuff, and like you hear like fucking Crimson Ghost and American Psycho, and like, oh, it's done. Like gonna get knocked out by fucking Edward Scissorhands. I don't know. The Michael Graves era, like everybody fucking finds Danzig's the iconic thing, but Michael Graves was like where I came into it. So like I thought all the Misfits songs sounded like that. So when I heard the Danzig shit, I'm like, doesn't sound right. It's a little too Elvisy for my taste.
There you go.
You heard it here first, kids.
I went
Elvisy for my taste.
I went to HMV because you were the cool kid at school. You're older and you're like, you had the Misfits T-shirt. You told me to watch Evil Dead, and I watched Evil Dead. And that's a whole other episode. We got to talk about Evil Dead from night. Like, there's so much to say about Evil Dead, but I will say this is that when I listened to Misfits the first time, I didn't get it. Like, I will say the first listen, I was like 13 years old, and actually when I went to high school for the first time, like visiting the high school, this is in 1997. My teacher Molly was mentioning that her brother, who's John, who played in the Brains for a little bit, for a very long time. And her brother was opening for the Misfits in this band called Vulgar Deli. And at that point, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I've heard the Misfits name, I think. And but this is before I even met you. And then eventually I'm like, I got to listen to this Misfits. So I go to HMV, and then
was she at that concert?
Probably.
I remember that was like one of my first concerts I ever went to was a Misfits show.
Wow.
And I fucking remember getting hit in the eyeball with a mohawk. That was my first experience in a mosh pit. It was great. Fuck, was she there? There's a part of you ever. I don't know if you want to consider this the Mandela effect or whatever. It's just I remember her coming up to me and saying, "Hey," like, but at the show, and I think I was drunk.
Yeah, you were a 7th grader at the time. I'm pretty sure.
Fuck. Memory is a really big haze. Was it later? It had to have been a little later, even though like I know it was on How the fuck did I get in there? Were you allowed at a concert venue?
Well,
I remember
look,
drinking.
by the time I got into the Misfits, the next time they came back, like Graves was already out of the band and Jerry only was the only guy playing. So, like, you caught him. I think Mike Hideous might have been singing that night. Anyway, the whole point is that, you know, I go to HMV and the cashier is like, oh, I like the older singers. So the first time I ever heard Misfits and really got into it was like, oh, okay, so there's that new singer. Like, that's what I heard before the album, and that someone disapproves of it. So I was like listening to it, and just punk rock to me, as a Green Day kid who heard some Rancid, I'm like, I thought you had to be British or sound like you want to be British. So the crooning thing was kind of like, I don't get it. But dude, then I think it was you who lent Robin or me the American Psycho album, and we took it to this guy Ian's house, and it was his birthday, and we just ended up playing video games. And here's the thing: when you're in HMV and you're just listening with the headphones and you're waiting to be amazed, it's not the way to listen to music, especially when there's a line of people waiting. It's
Yeah,
not,
you can't be rushed.
You can't be rushed. So we played it.
Mind you, like listening to a punk song like that's like really like you
Yeah.
know, like 1 2
I
3
know.
4 1 2 3 4.
I know,
Like
but
you
still.
could get into it. Is that you can't really listen to an Emerson, Lake, and Palmer like while somebody's like waiting behind you and shit. Like the intro's not finished.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, type of thing.
So anyway, I remember just like we put it on. We just started playing Mario Kart or Duke Nukem or like GoldenEye, one of those, and we just played the album. And then before you know it, it was over. And we ended up listening to it 5-6 times. And then you know your ear just starts anticipating songs like Dig Up Her Bones and The Haunting and all these other amazing tunes. And you're like, wow, this is really good. So then by the end of the day, both me, Ian, and Robin were converted Misfit fans just based on, you know, how playable the album was. And then I re-listened and I went back into the Danzig. And the first Danzig song I ever heard was, it was on Legacy of Brutality on a copied tape that my uncle gave me. He just gave me a box of tapes and Misfits was written on it. And I heard Angel Fuck. And when you hear the chorus of Angel Fuck, and you're like, oh, it's kind of Elvis, and you hear that Danzig scream for the first time, you're like, fuck, I get it. And this is great. And I like both versions of Misfits. You know, some people are like, oh, I like the new, I like the old. I liked it all. I like both Graves.
Cool to have a
era.
weird history. Like Misfits has like a really like fucking I don't know the word for it. Which is like a odd history, you know. Like you have like Danzig, who has a very distinct voice. I don't think you don't hear many voices ever like implicated, especially in like punk or metal or like hard rock. I think they consider it more.
But in
hard rock.
Psychobilly, like, you know, that's where
Psychobilly, yeah.
that's where that tone lives and that tone dominates, because you either sound like Danzig or you sound like a like there's like one or the other.
It's like a really more heavy guttural punk sound.
Yeah.
Like in Psychobilly.
Yeah, like Reverend Horton Heat, like that kind of stuff. Anyway, so man, Misfits have been part of life so much. And by the time I saw them, Jerry was doing his thing, and Des from Black Flag was there, and Mark Ramone was on drums. But you know what?
That was the Rainbow Room, right?
Yeah.
Not far from here.
No, actually, that one was at the,
I'm only saying by
the-
reputation. I didn't see that.
the Medley. I saw the one at the Medley. So
I went to the Medley too for
yeah.
but it wasn't the same show.
No,
We
no.
weren't at that same
But
show.
Medley was this venue on Saint Denis, folks, where
That was a fun,
it's fucking fun venue. Not too big, not too small, and all these
Just right.
just right. All these bands that were coming that couldn't quite fill up the Spectrum, or there wasn't enough room at the Spectrum. They'd go there, and it was just awesome. It was a really long stage, and anyway, so yeah,
That's
man.
where Danzig also played.
Saw Danzig there too. Saw AFI there too. Fell in love with AFI. More on that later, folks, when we're talking about Horp. So yeah, Misfits really. That's when I fell truly in love with Misfits, and my band Judgmental. We just played so many covers. Disgruntled, like that's what we bonded over. Like being a kid in NDG in Montreal is just like having a Misfits T-shirt or loving a Misfits was like a rite of passage. So it's really cool. And yeah, I saw the Misfits play with Jerry. I'm like, I don't know, he'll never hear this, but it wasn't my bag, because just Jerry's a great singer, but the voice I hear in my head when I want to hear these songs is not his. And him and Marky would play the songs way too fast. So there's like, not to sound like an old cranky man, but when I can't recognize the melody, I'm all about melody, And when it's too fast and you're losing the melody, usually bands that played too fast have no melody and they need to make up for it. But in this circumstance, it's like you have
You need the
beautiful
melody.
melody that you're drowning out.
Yeah. You're sacrificing the actual sound to just be like street cred fast.
So fast forward to when I see Danzig for the first time, Doyle comes out and they play 20 minutes of original Misfit music at the correct tempo, and it's like all of a sudden the gears start clicking. You're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to sound like. And that was great. I remember seeing Danzig for the first time. I saw Danzig a few times with Doyle doing his thing, and it was awesome, man. Anything else about the Misfits you want to add in, brother?
No, man, I think I hit it, like I never grew out of it. I always like love it and stuff, but I never really.
Wait, I got one, dude. So the last Vagina Crouton show ever, they're opening up for the Misfits. I'm out of town, and they need a guy to play the Gimp. And I'm like, well, no one's better to play the Gimp than Marco. Yeah. So I'm like, hey, if you want to meet Alice Cooper, call up Marco.
Yeah, I tried to sneak out of that story. Yeah.
If you wanna. So what happened at what you met Jerry only once? How did that go?
At that show. It was pretty similar to the Alice Cooper meeting, but he was just more like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, he seems like a really nice guy. He's like willing to like just hang out and like meet his fans and type of stuff. So like he shook my hand and shit, and that was pretty much the story of that. It was like a lot more like Babin's talking to him.
Weren't you dressed like a Gimp though when you met him?
No, I was not wearing a shirt because I was dressed like the Gimp, which is just like slip this on.
Yeah.
And really, there wasn't anything.
It wasn't a big bondage outfit.
It wasn't really. No. It was a mask, and then I was also a space monkey. To which, like both times, I come out and I'm like dancing on stage, which was like all improvised and stuff. Because also it was like I guess stagehand. They called it stagehand because I was just supposed to put throw the inflatables on stage at the proper moment.
We should mention that the Vagina Croutons is kind of like a Montreal's Gwar, like just to say.
Yeah, they are fucking very funny, like hard music and very fun to come out on stage dressed up as a monkey with like a penis pistol, spraying the crowd. Realizing that I was wearing a cape and I was just like aiming it at people while the cape was like drenched over it, so I kind of looked like a flasher that was peeing on himself. So I'm like I have like this amount of peripheral vision and stuff, and like I think I was led because Babin is just like seeing that I'm walking blindly towards the edge of the stage, doing this to like the crowd and stuff, and he's like leading me back because I could have just like fell into the crowd and shit and just be ripped to pieces. So yeah, that was fun. What was the question? Yeah, so yeah, that's where I met Jerry only. I think I was probably still dressed up as the Gimp.
Gotcha.
Which was anything too risque. I wasn't wearing a strap on. I was just holding a penis pistol.
Just finish off the little Misfits discussion. Well, the Misfits discussion. What time are we at? Just to finish up the Misfits discussion, I was very fortunate enough before pre-COVID to be able to see Misfits at Maddison Square Garden because Melissa and I were in New York anyway, and the original plan was we wanted to see Beetlejuice on Broadway, and we wanted to go away for her birthday, and it just so happens that Misfits were in town, and we had no intention of going because we couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. Like tickets were crazy, and I'll say the short version of the story. Basically, my friend Steven Fairweather, who runs Stranger Radio, he also plays bass in Gob. He was there, and we weren't even supposed to see him that day, but we went to go across town. We walked all the way to this place to get Melissa a T-shirt from a tattoo shop. And I messaged him. I'm like, hey, by the way, buddy, you live in New York, right? We're here. Where do you live? And he's like, around the corner from there, actually. So we're like, oh, well, okay. Destiny, I guess. And earlier that day, we wanted to go see Little Shop of Horrors off Broadway, but it was sold out. So
I was playing at the same time?
Yeah, but an off-Broadway show, and Melissa's cousin designed all the puppets for that one, so it would have been awesome to see. And Steven was like going to the Misfits show, so we hung out with him all day, ended up having a great conversation. He's vegan as fuck, and so is Melissa, so Steven took us on a little tour of the East Village to show Melissa all these little vegan bakeries and shit like that. and it was great. And then Steven's like, well, our hotel was a 15-minute walk away from Madison Square Garden, right around the corner from Rockefeller Center. So we get on the subway with him, and he's like, well, do you guys want to come to the show just outside to see if you could get a scalper ticket? And we're like, well, okay, maybe it'll work out. So, but we don't know. And we have a bag full of goodies, so we're like, we're good either way. We could go to the hotel, watch a rerun of Saturday Night Live, because we knew they weren't having a show that night because we took the tour like a bunch of dorks that day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like we did New York, like when you guys went to New York and Duff's and all that. You guys saw New York like cool people. We were like, wow, take a photo. Look, this is where the Saturday Night Live happens.
Well, it was more like a pub crawl for us.
Nice.
Like we just did you get drunk to a certain degree and stuff. Eating a lot of British food. Nothing against British cuisine. It's just I was too hungover and sick to eat anything.
So we're on our way.
Not only that. Sorry. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Oh no, please.
No, I was just saying like Times Square is a fucking the worst place to be when you're hungover and you're not quite sure what reality is all about, because there's a bunch of Disney characters wanting to take pictures with you and then asking
off-brand Disney characters, like so they don't get sued. Like, it looks like Elmar and stuff. Like, Elmo has like 3 eyes or something.
Yeah, either which way. Like, don't look too eager to take a picture with them, because then you have to pay them. Yeah. And like when you have like 50, if you have a whole slew, maybe this is my dislike for Disney is, it's just I got attacked by a bunch of them at Times Square. It's like, take a picture with me, take a picture. Woody fucking is the most terrifying person when he's 6'3", like muscular and everything and shit. It's like, you want to take a picture? Like,
it was like more like Woody Harrelson.
What's wrong with you not taking a picture? You want to fucking pay up. And I'm like, am I gonna get mugged by Woody?
It's Woody Harrelson as Woody from Toy Story.
Maybe.
It's like, do you believe in fate?
He double tapped.
Infinity and beyond.
Ready to kill. So yeah, sorry about your Misfits.
So Steven's like, yo, come anyway. Look, maybe there's some scalpers, and we're like, yeah, whatever. It's a quick walk to the hotel. So we get there and we go up to where the scalpers are, and Steven just kind of walks off. He's like, well, there they are, and I'll see you later, man. So he walks off. We go up to the scalper, and we're like, hey, how much is this? How much for 2? And I'm expecting in my head, when you prepare yourself for disappointment, where you're like, Christmas, I know Christmas is canceled. I'm not expecting Christmas to happen. It's cool. I get it. It's canceled. So we go up to the guy, and I'm like, how much for 2? And I have a number in my head that I can pull off, and I have a number in my head that I'm expecting. Mm-hmm. So really, I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen here, and we're going to have to say no. That's what my consciousness, I'm like, that's what's going to fucking happen. And I'm like, how much for 2? And he gives me a number that's here. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, we could do that. Mm-hmm. So I have cash on me. So we pay for the tickets, and we're like, oh my God, we're going to fucking go. This is insane. So then the gears start opening up, because I'm like, at this point, like when you're, like I said, you're preparing for disappointment. I'm not excited to go there because I don't want to get heartbroken if I don't. Mm-hmm. Then I become the fucking 13-year-old kid who's playing Mario Kart and finally understands some Misfits and hears Angel Fuck, and it all comes circling back. I'm going to see the Misfits. Holy shit. So Melissa and I go inside, and we're beaming, and we go up to the person, and the security guard's like, hi. And he looks at us and says, no food inside. And Melissa has this big bag of vegan treats, and we're like, shit. So we go outside, and we proceed, and we just ate the biggest meal ever, and we are so
you're
full.
Not hungry at all?
We're not hungry at all. Never have we ever not been as hungry. So we kind of start trying to shove it in our mouths, like just kind of eating, and we can't do it anymore. There's too much of it. It's too rich. Mm-hmm. So Melissa goes up to a homeless guy, and she's like, hi, would you like this? And the guy's like, oh, and she's like, it's vegan. And this homeless guy grimaces, and he's just like, hands it back, and I'm just like, you're homeless. It's vegan food. You're not too good for this. There's a needle in your arm still.
It's like, what do I look like?
Exactly.
Non-meat eater.
Yeah. So some people have beliefs that are unshakable. So we're like, fuck.
Doesn't matter if you have a house or not.
So we end up like leaving the treats next to the bus stop, like in a sketchy plastic bag. And we go inside, and I know the Damned is playing, and we get in, and the Damned, ironically, are playing the only song I know, which is New Rose, that Guns N' Roses plays off the Spaghetti Incident. So that's on. Anyway, so I see the Damned for 5 minutes. It's still cool to see the Damned, but and then we settle in, and we are up in the nosebleeds, dude, but who the fuck cares? You know what I mean? Like, if it's a show you really want to be at, you don't care if you're in the nosebleeds. So we're watching, and it's funny, though, because I got to say, Rancid come on tour, and by then, people have been drunk, and they've been drunk all day. Because, you know, they're waiting in line, they're excited, they've already seen the show a bit, and we're in a section with a bunch of dudes who brought their wives who didn't want to be there. So all the dudes that are watching the Misfits, they're like, you know, they're into it and Rancid, but the wives are just kind of like, every time someone would get up to go pee, which was often, they'd roll their eyes and they get so mad because in Madison Square Garden, the seats are really close to each. It's a smaller venue.
Really tight. Yeah.
People were shorter back in the day. So they were so annoyed. And then during the show, I just saw all these wives just on Instagram the entire time, not watching the show, just waiting for it to be over. And Melissa doesn't know a fucking Misfits song if her life depended on it, but was dancing, was into it, was taking photos and videos of me rocking out, just like really was embracing that this night mattered a lot to me. And even though she just threw away $100 of fucking vegan delights that were too good for some homeless people, it's really quite amazing that was happening. So like all the respect in the world.
You gotta really, like, appreciate that moment, you know.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's pretty miserable. Like, I'm sorry, like, I can't get past the fact that, like, well, why did you buy it? Not you, but
I know.
Like, theoretically speaking, why are you buying tickets to a show that you're not going to want to be part of?
I know.
And then why are you dragging your wife to it? You know.
No, well, the guys were into it, but the wives were like, fuck this.
But what were they there for?
Well,
said they were for Misfits, or
yeah. Well, the husbands wanted to see the Misfits, and they took their wives with them, but the wives didn't care.
Okay, so they were into it, but like the wives didn't give it. Well, why just go guys' night out then?
I know. So anyway, we're
like nobody ends up happy in a situation.
We're watching,
like that.
And it really, like, you know, like I said, I was like a really excited kid just to be there, and I was like, oh my god, we're in Madison Square Garden, all this wrestling shit. So I start studying the room, and I'm like, this is where all that crazy shit happened. And then Rancid come on stage, and I've seen Rancid 5 times, and they're like, oh my god, man, I can't believe we're playing the Garden. And I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't just another day for them. This is
a big deal.
This is a big deal that punk bands are playing Madison Square Garden, like, or Misfits and Rancid, like, playing Madison Square Garden is a big deal. And then the Misfits come on, and the same thing, like, they're like, I can't believe we're playing at the Garden. And I just keep thinking, I'm like, I'm really glad I'm here, because this show, all you ever hear is like Judas Priest's, like, you know, jokes or Spinal Tap jokes where they're like, we've been a lot of places and no one rocks harder than Springfield. So to know that they've been playing music respectively in various bands for 40 years, and this gig shakes that foundation is really cool.
It's
and I'm so glad I saw
deal.
that. And they played great. And Danzig, I've seen Danzig 4 or 5 times, and I've seen him in a varying degree of quality, and he sang his ass off that night. So really glad that I couldn't afford beer, so I remember the whole show, the entire show. and just to finish off the story, man, some punk motherfucker, and this is really funny. When the show's over and everyone's walking out and everyone's going downstairs on the escalator, there's one guy that starts singing fucking Dig Up Her Bones just to be a prick. And I'm like, God, that guy's fucking funny, because he's just like, it's kind of like wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs in a Habs game or vice versa, where you're just trying to be a punk. And I'm like, that's badass, man. That's so fucking funny.
Well, it's funny that he knew like Dig Up Her Bones was the right song to not sing.
Yeah. So, dude, I'm glad we talked about Misfits. Thanks for indulging me and telling that story, because I wanted to tell it on this podcast for sure. But I got to say, as much as we love the Misfits, there's another man in our lives that have both entertained us on the screen and in CD, and that is Mr. Rob Zombie. Next episode. Next episode.